What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, Pete's Carport, and welcome to another 944 Porsche video. Today we're going to dive into the interior and we're going to change out something that I wanted to change out the day I got this car, and found this product online and was very excited. So this is going to resolve our sloppy shifter, which is very common on these Porsche 944s, and this product comes from only944.com. I found this through another video that I found online. Somebody was just doing a quick install on this, and the item looked amazing, so I decided to go on their website, do a little research, and go ahead and order it. So this right here is just the shifter part. They sell several different parts to this, even a short shifter kit. We are most likely going to be installing all of the parts. This happens to be the part that's going to most likely get rid of your sloppy shifter. And let me jump in the car real quick and show you what I mean by sloppy shifter. So when this car is in gear, which it is in first right now, you can see there is an enormous amount of play, and while I'm shifting through the gears, it makes it really difficult, specifically third and fourth. A lot of times I'm hitting the side and I'm getting vibrations, even some grinds. Now I know my synchros could have some issues, but I feel like that's a lot of play there. That is in third gear, and we're dealing with a lot of play. So it should be a pretty easy install from what I've seen. I already went ahead and pried this up right here just to make sure. And from that point, you're going to be pulling this whole thing up and out, and we're going to swap out the internal parts. So let's go ahead and look at the instructions, get set up, and go ahead and do the install. So instructions are online, and they're actually very good, so I suggest if you're going to install this, you might want to look that over, but I'm going to walk you guys through it as well. I went ahead and grabbed what it said online: 2 Phillips heads, said 1 or 2, a 13mm wrench, a 13mm socket, a either says C-clamp or some vice grips, a 5mm Allen key, and then it said Loctite, which is supplied, which is there. And you can see here, this is a pretty simple piece. So let's jump in the car. I'm going to walk you through how easy this is, because we're going to do it pretty quickly. So you've got your shifter boot here. You want to prop the plastic here and pull this up like this, and you can see there's a little clip there. Now you can use a pry tool or something, but it does come off very easily. Make sure you don't lose that. And mine has this nice little rubber boot here, which is kind of tore up, but we're going to go ahead now and be able to pull our shifter off, set that off to the side, and we're going to want to remove this rubber boot too. Even though it's a little tore up, we'll set it off to the side. It does protect from heat coming up, so that is nice. And then down here, a lot of you guys are going to have this all tore up. Mine's not in the best of shape, but it's still good. And now we can access what we need to access in order to take this off. So let me walk you through that now. So first we're going to remove this little C-clip here, and then we've got to remove the 2 13mm bolts, which you're going to have one buried down in there, unless yours is all tore up, then you'll be able to see it. And there's one right there, right below, so right below this shifter rod here. I'm going to go ahead and pop those out, pop this C-clip off, and come right back. So I know online, I think it said 2 Phillips head, but I ended up using 2 flatheads to pop the C-clip out. It was a little tough, but you just pressed on it and it kind of popped up. And I think I got both these bolts out. Now I just got to reach down in there and get that bolt, and we can move on. Okay guys, now that we've got the shifter out and completely unbolted from the car, I should have seen this from the beginning, but you can see somebody already modified this, so I'm wondering if they tried to solve the issue or if the issue is the other parts that I can replace. Either way, we're going to go ahead and swap it out. Now on the website it says you need to use these Phillips head screwdrivers that they mentioned to basically pry the ball out of this plastic. Be very careful not to break the plastic, and it also says it can go flying. So one of the methods was to take the 2 Phillips head screwdrivers like this and pry it up with both going both different directions. So you basically want the other one going down. I'm gonna have to do that without the camera in my hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So it ended up being way easier than I thought. What I did was I slid the screwdriver down in here and pressed, and this came loose because this was in there, and I was able to kind of wedge the screwdriver like that. Popped right out, and then this rubber piece here will separate, and the goal now is to pop our new one in. And I read it wrong, it's not a vice grip, it's a vice, which we do have. So I can go ahead and set that up in a vice now and pry it together. I'll show you guys an image and I'll show you how I get this back together. So after struggling with my really crappy vise, all I ended up doing was, you have to keep the plastic piece separate from the metal piece, but what I did was I just pressed down really hard, got the plastic piece to pop in, and now you can see I can turn this so that it lines up correctly to be seated properly. So I can now get that seated in there. We can now bolt it back into the car and get the rest of it set up. So I forgot to mention this, but you can take these off right when you start doing this, because you're going to need them off when you slide this back in. You want to make sure you grab these rubber pieces off of your old shifter. I'll go ahead and do that now and slide them on this, and then we can go ahead and slide this back in the car. It's just going to maneuver into there. Our 13mm bolts, which have a washer and a lock washer that go on there. Make sure you put those back on. We're going to bolt this down. I've already tested it out. It's pretty easy to get back in there. And we're almost at the home stretch, because all we're going to have to do is attach that into the shifter, but we'll jump in the car to do that. Alright, so that wasn't that hard to slide in there. Make sure this part of it is on this side and you can kind of angle it in. And our next step is you want to make sure these are just hand tightened. So I just hand tightened the two 13mm bolts down. We're going to be installing this. Now, the way that it says online is washer, bearing, which is that piece there, washer, and that's going to go on each side. So it kind of came in the way that it should be. Hopefully yours did. But you got these three. So you got washer, bearing, washer, and then on the other side, washer, bearing, washer. This part's going to slide through this way, and our nut's going to go on this side here. So let me go ahead and set that up. So one thing I miss is, before assembling these bearings on here, you want to make sure you use some sort of bearing grease. I've got some right here, and I'm going to basically just add this in here, since I had already put this together and realized it, but I wanted you guys to know to do this prior to assembling your bolt into your shifter. Okay, so this is how it should look. Next, what we're going to do is slide our bolt through into the shifter, add some Loctite to the threads here, and make sure you got that nut that went on the end here, which I have sitting on my lap right now. And we're going to thread the nut on, and you want to make sure you have enough Loctite on there to hit the thread. So let's go ahead and get that done. So this bolt actually threads right through the shifter. So you want to make sure you thread it all the way through, so we can get the nut on the end. Get this in here. And then we'll be able to add the Loctite and add the nut onto the end of that and tighten that up. The next step to this is pretty critical. You want to make sure the distance from here and here is approximately the same. Now you can grab a tape measure, which I'm going to do after this, but I can clearly see I have a much larger distance here than here, and that is when the car is in neutral. Also, I wanted to point out once again, make sure this bolt is not over tightened, that your bearings can freely move. That way you have a nice stiff shifter, but it still moves freely. And what you need to do now is, what I messed up, you need to make sure that these bolts are loose. I went ahead and tightened them accidentally. When you loosen those bolts, then you can pull the shifter back and then tighten the bolts, and the shifter will be in the proper position. This way, it's critical, because you don't want to be hitting your plate here. After doing that, you want to make sure every gear you can put it into every gear without hitting. If we hit in between first, second, fifth, and reverse, we're going to have to go under the car and make a linkage adjustment, which I'll show you guys after we get this adjusted. So if you look down in here, you'll see why you want to make sure you have that bolt and the front one, the two bolts, just hand tightened. This way you can slide your shifter till you center it, and then you can tighten down the bolts. There is a groove in there that the bolts can slide on for adjustment. So once you get it centered where you need it, which I think mine's going to be almost all the way back, you can then tighten them down tightly, firmly, and they'll stay in position. So next we want to make sure the car is going to go into all the gears. So we can get first, second, third, and fourth, but as you can see, I cannot get into fifth or reverse without slamming into our side edge here. What we're going to have to do now is get under the car. You're going to need two people to do this, and we're going to adjust our linkage, which is located on the transaxle. So let's go ahead and get out of the car. So guys, the next step, if you have an issue like mine where you're not able to get all the gears, would be to jump to the back. This is the trans axle right here, and above that there's a linkage. Let me see if I can get up in here, because this is the other part, or one of the other parts besides the short shifter. This is the other piece that only 944.com sells, and this is a very, very good piece to replace if yours looks like mine. So the next step would have been to loosen these bolts here, 13 and 17 millimeter, adjust the shifter to the middle, have somebody hold it in the middle, tighten these bolts back up, and then that would allow it to adjust the distance of the shift. So in my case, this is completely loose, and I'm wondering if that's most of my shift issues. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tighten that up the best I can, but it is very rusted, and I want to replace that entire piece out, and I also want to clean down this entire transaxle because there is a lot of grime and dirt from all the years up in here, and it makes it a little more difficult to see what you're doing. But let me jump out from under the car. Okay, so now that I'm out from underneath the car, what you want to do is jack up this side of the vehicle, which is the driver's side. They recommend taking the tire off, but the way that I did it is I slid right up underneath the vehicle here, and if I had it jacked up, it would have been a lot easier. You have your transaxle, and right above the transaxle is that part that we're talking about right there. Okay, so it's not too tough to access. You do want to make sure safety first. If you're jacking up the car, make sure you put stands and all that type of stuff. But let's jump back into the car, because what I was able to do is after I took apart this thing to re-grease the bearings and retighten it back up, I'm now able to, or I was able to get it to go into every gear. There's reverse. And first is a little tough. Now, what I want to do is center this. I'm going to try adjusting that, and that way I'll know if that's my main issue, and I 100% believe it. That's definitely part of my issue. As you can see, sometimes it's really tough to get into gear, and sometimes it just goes right in. So sometimes I got to like jam it in and it'll go, which creates, sometimes I grind the gears just because I think I'm in and it doesn't quite go, and I let up on the clutch a little bit. So I want to eliminate that all in the future. So this is the first step. Now what I'm going to do is put the boot rate back on in the order I took it off. So you've got your rubber piece here if you have that, your shifter, don't forget that clip that goes on, snap on your cover here, and you're all set. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you a lot. Obviously I have still some issues to work out, but that'll be on the next video, showing you guys how to install that linkage and how much of a difference that made. Once again guys, my name's Pete. This is Pete's Carport. You guys have an awesome day, a blessed week, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Oh my god, it feels like a brand new shifter. Just got done tightening up that bolt, and I cannot wait to jump back on only944.com and order that upgraded linkage. My goodness, this is like a brand new shifter. This car is shifting so smooth. Can't wait to get your guys' opinion on this if you install it. I'm excited. This is awesome. What a difference, because this is the reason why I bought this car, is for the enjoyment of being able to shift through gears, take tight corners, and have fun with this sporty little car. Have a great day, guys.